everyone, let's get started. This tutorial is a companion to a video we did a few videos back, and it is using the ribs and rows pattern, and we had designed it in a scarf. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about how to use the same pattern working in the round, and we are going to make a really lovely hat. And as you can see, the yarn I have here is a colorway of kind of greens going into teals and maroons. And actually, this yarn comes from another project I had made and decided afterwards I didn't like it at all. So I unraveled the whole thing. And I have to say, it can be actually quite therapeutic to unravel your work. I really did enjoy it because now I can see the potential of a new project. So in total, what I would have here is, if I took this away, I would have approximately 100 grams. And I know that because these were from a previous Pantone yarn, and they would come in those braids of 5 different colorways. And in fact, I think this one's an extra. So I would say I probably have about 120 grams here. And to add this on would probably be 140, and which should be plenty to make a hat. Now, generally speaking, those Pantone sets claim that they can make a full hat out of them. I would say that would be true if you're making a child's hat. But if you're making an adult size hat, it will not be enough. And so that's what we're going to be doing today, is an adult hat. And so I've added a few extra balls here of a colorway that I thought would match. And I've got a lot of this leftover gray that I'm going to use for the trim. So all in all, I would say a medium average size adult hat, you're going to need anywhere from 120 to 150 grams. It will depend on how much you want it to slouch, of course. So that's a long way around to telling you we're working on a hat today. And so those are the materials that I'm using with regards to yarn. And if you're making this for a child, you will probably need a lot less. So I always have a pair of scissors on hand and my trusty darning needle to sew in any ends at the end. And for this project, I am using a 6mm hook, also known as a J or a size 10. Okay, so you might also want to have a trusty little measuring tape on hand to measure the head that you are making it for. So on average, a couple of things. On average, a medium size, or I would say on average, an adult size head. So we measure around from the base of the head all the way around to the front of the forehead. And on average for a female, you're going to get about 22 inches. I would say 20 to 22. And the one I'm making for is indeed 22 inches in circumference. And on average, from around the eyebrow area to the crown of the head can be anywhere from 8 to 11 inches. Again, I'm using inches, but you can also convert that to centimeters on the other side of your measuring tape. What's really odd is I live in Canada and we do use the metric system. So we use kilometers, meters, to judge distance. But it's so funny when we still talk about weight and things like height or length, we still use the imperial system. I haven't figured out why. I grew up in an era where we were using both. So for those of you that live in Europe and use the metric system, I apologize ahead of time for not always converting, because I still think of lengths in terms of inches. Don't ask me why. Anyway, a slight diversion there. So if you are making this hat for a child, I would probably do anywhere around a circumference of anywhere between 16, as small as 16 up to 20 for a toddler. I know my goddaughter, she's got quite a large head. So the circumference of her head is already, I think, like about 20 inches, and she is only 3. So there's some little background information on that. So we are going to use the ribs and rows pattern. So we're going to start right away with the pattern repeat. Okay, and we are going to add the brim onto the hat later. So we're going to start right away with the initial band, the circumference around, work our way up to the crown of the head, and then we're going to come back and work the brim of the hat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to start with this light color here, this little cream color, so we'll get everything else out of the way. So we are going to begin with a slip knot, and please excuse my hands here. I can't seem to get it out. I was doing a craft, and for some reason the black ink just does not leave my hand. So my apologies for the state of my hands at the moment. So you're going to begin with the slip knot. Now, when we worked on the ribs and rows pattern in a scarf fashion or a flat project, we said that we needed an odd number of stitches in order to flank the ribs on each side with a double crochet. And I'm just going to grab this scarf right here that we did. Okay, so we used an odd number of stitches so that once we're working the ribbing, we always had a regular double crochet on each side. And so that's where the odd number comes in handy. But now that we're going to be working in the round, we don't need one of these regular crochets. So we are going to need an even number of stitches. Okay. So when working in the round, we're going to get an even number of stitches. So once you have your slip knot, we're going to do our foundation chain row, but we're going to do something a little bit different for this particular project. And I haven't talked about this with you guys yet, so I figured this would be the perfect opportunity to do so. We have 22 inches around the circumference of the head that I'm working on. I'm only going to do a foundation chain row up until 21 inches. Because the fibers will loosen over the course of time and I don't want it to become too big. So it's better to always start off a little bit more snugly as the fibers will loosen in time. But in this case, I'm actually going to add an extra inch because the ribbing actually creates a little bit of a scrunching effect. So a lot of times you'll lose a little bit of the length and that's because of the stretchiness of the ribbed rows. So I'm going to add at least an extra inch and take it from there. So what we're going to do so that that chain doesn't become too tight. It's very common that when we do that first chain that it inadvertently, as much as we try, can eventually become a little bit tight around the head. So we're going to use a chainless foundation row. And we're going to use single crochets, and so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So once you've got your slip knot, you're going to chain 2. So you'll bring your yarn through 1 and 2. Once you've done that, you are going to place your hook into the very first chain and you're going to pull up a loop. Okay, just like that. Now you're going to yarn over as if you're going to resolve a single crochet, but you're only going to pull through the first loop. And what that does is that creates a chain on its own. You've still got 2 loops on the hook, and now you yarn over and pull through both loops. So it's created your single crochet, and I'm just holding on to this, and your chain, foundation chain, is underneath. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. I always like holding on to it so it reminds me of where to go next. So I'm going to find that chain that's just at the base of the single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into that. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. Okay, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first loop. So see how that's created another chain right there. And now I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2. So it's creating a chain and the single crochet row at the same time. It definitely takes some getting used to. And I know when I was first learning it, I kind of really had to take it apart several times. So I'm going to do this again. And at the end of it, if it's still cumbersome for you, feel free to just do a regular set of chains for your 22 inch length or 21 inch length, and then go back and do a single crochet, 1 into each stitch all the way around. That is perfectly a-okay. Okay, just like to kind of introduce new techniques. So this is the chainless foundation single crochet. Again, see, this is the chain, the base chain. I'm going to insert into that. I'm going to pull a loop through, and then I'm going to just pull a loop through again, and that creates the next chain at the bottom. See that? Now I just kind of hold on to that. Then I yarn over, and I'll pull through both loops, and that's what creates the single crochet. So you see, here's the chain at the bottom, and there's the single crochet at the top. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to insert into that last chain, yarn over, pull through. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through only one. See, the chain has been formed there. Now with these 2 loops I have left, I'll yarn over and pull through 2. See that? So we've got our chain and we've got our single crochet. And the beauty of doing this particular type of technique for foundation is it really keeps it very relaxed, as opposed to just doing the chains where it's easy for it to become hard and tight. This one kind of remains its flexibility. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense for you. You're going to do that all the way until you get a total of, for me, it's going to be 23 inches, 1 inch more than the circumference that I need. If this is really frustrating you at this point, if you're still new to crochet, just do the number of chains you need and then go back and do a single crochet in each stitch. This is technically row 1 of our pattern repeat. See how it's got a lot of give? 40 stitches of a chainless foundation row. Okay, so if you just went ahead and did your single crochets, which might be a little bit tighter, you may need a few more. I know in the past, sometimes I've needed up to 70 chains. So it just goes to show you how much give this chainless foundation row has. So because we've done our chain and our single crochets together, we've technically already done row 1 of our repeat. Now, remember, in this project, we're working in the round. Okay, so just make sure that your work is not twisted. And you're going to go back to the top of that chain, back to the first stitch here. That's the first official stitch. So you're going to just slip stitch to join. And now you're officially going to be working in the round. So I'm just going to take that out and just double check that it's not twisted. So it's all nicely together. Now it's going to look a little bit funny because we're joining the top of the, where the actual single crochets, and this last chain snuggles up a little bit there, which is quite normal. Don't worry about that for now. When we do the brim of the hat, we're going to seam this a little closer together. Now, if it bothers you, you can use your little tail, and I'm going to do that right now. And you can just use that to kind of cinch that end shut, just so that it's out of your way and it feels a little bit even. So you see, this was my last single crochet, so this is the chain that belongs to it. So I'm just going to weave that in like that, and that solves the problem. So just do that a couple of times and then come back here, and that's it. Okay, and then we'll work over this later when we work on the brim. So now it looks a little bit more even, and we've got row or round. We're now working in the round. Okay, so now for round 2, so remember in the flat project we had an odd number of stitches. We now have an even number of stitches. Okay, so to continue on with our pattern, we need to go into round 2, which is also another round of single crochet stitches. So what we want to do is chain 1, once you've chained one, we're going to go right back into that same stitch, insert our hook, and we're going to place a single crochet. And then we're going to go into the next stitch and we're going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so for round 2, we're going to go all the way around, one single crochet into every single stitch. So this will be part of the pattern in the round of the ribs and rows. So round 1 and round 2 are simply going to be single crochet stitches, one into every stitch. So go ahead and finish that, and I will meet you at the end of round 2. Okay, so I've just come up to the end here, and it actually looks like it's shrunk in a bit. Don't panic. See how much stretch it has? Just keep that in mind. We do want our hats to sit a little bit snug. Now, sometimes we think when working the round that this is still a stitch. It is not. And as you can see, the chain 1 comes out of that. Chain 1 always counts as 1. So we do not work into that stitch. That will give us extra stitches. So what you want to do is go right to the top of that next stitch, and you just want to slip stitch to join round 2. And if you're ever uncertain, just go back and double check, count all your stitches to make sure you haven't made a little boo-boo. Now, at the end of the day, if you're off by 1, it is not the end of the world. It's just that if you want to maintain the consistency in that ribbed effect, which is coming up in the next couple of rows, you really want to try your best to keep your stitch count with an even number. Okay, now one thing I forgot, I am actually going to introduce another color. So I'm going to, for now, as long as I have this cream, I'm going to try and use it only for rows 1 and 2. So now for, rounds. For round 3, we're now going to move on to using double crochet stitches. But I want to introduce a new color. So usually when I introduce a new color, before I close off this round, I'm just going to take that out. Okay. We are going to pull through with the new color. So this is my little sagey green here. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave a bit of a tail. Whoops, I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to go back and find the top of my first stitch, which is right there. And now, instead of picking up this one, I'm just going to set it down, and I'm going to introduce my next color. And that's what I'm going to pull through. Okay, so I'm going to pull that through there, and then I'm going to pull it through the stitch I've just worked out of. And then just give that a little bit of a tug there. It is going to feel a little bit kind of unsecured for a bit, but don't panic. And if you want, you can actually just do one tie of this tail here. Okay, and then just leave this to the side. We're not snipping our yarn off because we're going to carry it up through in when we come back to round 1 again. So for now, I'm going to be working with my green yarn and just pulling it a little bit. So for the next round, whoops. So you can see now it looks like the green's just coming right out of there, which is what we want. So for the next round, what we want to do is just pull this up a wee bit. We're going to chain 1. And now we're going to double crochet back into that same stitch. So we'll yarn over, insert into the stitch, pull through, and I'm going to keep it nice and relaxed because remember we only chained 1. Sometimes you've seen me do projects where I chain 3, but usually when I do things in the round, most of the time, not all the time, most of the time I'll do the chain 1 method and then double crochet right away because it kind of creates a chunkier stitch and it'll sit nicely against the end of the round once we get there. So this does not count as 1. This is the full stitch here. So that's a double crochet, and that's what we're going to do for round 3 of this pattern is 1 double crochet into each and every single stitch all the way around. Pretty simple. And it's a great way to practice your stitches if you're a little bit newer to crochet. Okay, so I am going to leave you here Make sure you pause the video if you need to go back and look at anything. So you see how that's coming out. I love those colors. So go ahead and do that. You're going to do one all the way around. You still want to have an even number of stitches. So for me, it's going to be 40. And then I'm going to meet you up right when we get to about here. Okay. And here is my last double crochet. And I'm going to find the top of that full stitch, which is right there. And I'm going to slip stitch to join. Now, one thing that I kind of should remind and preface is that for this particular project, and this yarn is very nice and relaxed, I am stitching extremely relaxed. So that's what's giving me a lot of give. I don't mind there being some kind of laciness to this. If you are a tight crocheter and you're doing it with this method, you may notice you're not going to have as much give. So you really want to make sure at this stage, while it's still in the early stages, to, try on the head that you're making it for. It should sit snugly. So it shouldn't be kind of loose and floppy, but it also shouldn't be, challenging to get on the head. Remember, it will kind of loosen over time. And if it's already loose when you place it on your head, then it's just going to eventually become too big for you. Okay, so just a little bit of background info. Whoops. Where's my green? Okay, there we go. So now we are going on to the final round of our pattern. And then we just begin repeating. Okay, so this is round 4. We will chain 1 nice and loose, and then double crochet into that very first stitch. Okay, and I just keep it nice and relaxed. This is going to be our seam line. Now we're going to work our ribbing effect. Okay, so we are going to work a front post double crochet, which you would have remembered from our previous project using this pattern. Do not work into this post or around this post, because the stitch of this has already been worked into. We want to go into the very next one. So you'll yarn over and you're going to insert your hook between the stitches, which is basically behind the post. See that? So the post has come to the front. Then you'll yarn over and pull through. And just pull it up a wee bit, and you'll yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2. So you're resolving it just like a regular double crochet. The difference is, instead of going into the stitch, we've gone around the post. So that is the front post double crochet. And if you want another refresher, we will also have a link to our front post double crochet tutorial in the description box down below, as well as the back post, which is what we're going to do next. So the ribbing effect is when we alternate front post and back post. We've just done a front post. Now you want to yarn over, and instead of inserting between the stitches through the front, we are going to insert from the back. And the idea here is to push the post to the back. Okay, then you'll yarn over and pull through, and you want to be careful there on the back post, because it's easy to pick up one of these loops here along the way, so you want to make sure you don't do that. So you've got your 3 loops, and then you resolve your double crochet as usual. Okay, so now you can see it's behind. So this one's in front, this one's behind. And that's the pattern, or that's the formula, I like to call it, for round 4, and that is our full pattern. You will then repeat round 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, until you get the height of your work that you wish. Now, I'm going to do a few more here with you just to get you into the hang of things. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to work into the next post right there. And I'm going to go in between the posts and push that post forward, just like that. I will then yarn over, gently pull through so that I only bring that loop through, and then I resolve the double crochet stitch. Okay, now I'm going to do the back post. So I'm going to yarn over and go in through the back between the stitch, or between the post and push that post back. Okay, and as you can see, the working yarn is ready to go already. And then I just gently pull it through so as not to pick up anything else. And then I resolve the double crochet. Okay, so you can see that ribbing effect. So front, back, front, back, front, back, all the way around. When you get to this last one, you should have a front post double crochet. So remember, this is the reason why for this project in the round, we used an even number of stitches instead of an odd number of stitches. So I'm going to let you loose to finish your round 4, and I'm going to meet you right back here and check in with you guys. Okay, so my plan worked. I just finished doing a back post double crochet. Now my last stitch here is a front post. So I'm very happy to report that I managed to keep my stitch count. So I just finished that double crochet. And now we are going to just slip stitch to join at the top of this regular double crochet. Now before I do that, I want to keep in mind that now we're going to go back to row 1 or round 1. So our pattern is complete. Round 1 and 2 are single crochets. Round 3 are double crochets. Round 4 are the alternating front and back post stitches. And that's it. So now that we're going back to round 1, I want to bring back in my cream color. So when I slip stitch, I'm going to insert my hook at the top here of this stitch. But I now want to set aside my green here, and I want to pick back up with my cream. I'm just going to leave that tail there, and I'll sew that in afterwards. And I'm just going to gently bring it up, and I'm going to feed it through here and there. Okay. Now I want to be careful because I carried it up through the second. I carried it up through 2 rows. So if I pull too tight, it's going to bunch. And in fact, a boo-boo that I did is usually I would feed it in through round 3 and then round 4, but I skipped that. So that is my little boo-boo. I'll show you again the next time I come to round 3. So for now, I'm just slip stitching, keeping it relaxed so it doesn't bunch my work. And now I'm going to repeat round 1. So I will chain 1. And right back into that same stitch, I'm going to single crochet. And that's what we're going to do all the way around. 1 single crochet into each stitch. So I love how that's coming out. Okay, so 1 single crochet into each stitch. We're now repeating the pattern. Go ahead and do row 1 and 2, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to now carry my sage up, same way I should have done with my cream here. Okay, so you are going to actually, I'll meet you at the end of this round. So we're repeating round 1. I'm going to meet you at the end. I'm just going to show you how to continue carrying up your yarn. Now, if you find it too cumbersome, too confusing, too much going on, please do feel free. You're going to snip your yarn, tie off your end, and tie on a new one. You can always weave your ends in later. It is not the end of the world. I just happen to be a person that likes to just carry it up as much as I can. There is no hard and fast rule behind that. One isn't better than the other. It's just different. So as always, do what's comfortable for you. But I know many of you are curious as to how to continue on this way. So that's why I'm going to show you that. So I'll meet you again at the end of round 1. Okay, I'm back at the end of round 1, and I'm ready to slip stitch to join, but I just wanted to quickly show you how I would carry up my yarn through each row. Okay, so I've done the last stitch and last single crochet into the last stitch there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch to join, but I'm going to bring up my green or my sage here, and I'm kind of going to trap it here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to hold it up. I'm going to insert my yarn. Sorry, I can't speak today. I'm going to insert my hook. And instead of just going for the cream, I actually want to have the green over the hook as I pick up the cream. And what that does is it's going to trap the green, see that? Right behind that stitch as I slip stitch. Okay, so if I turn it over, see how it's trapped in there? And then it just continues to come up with you. So now I can just whoop, drop it off. I'll chain one and single crochet and continue on with round 2 as usual. 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around. And when I come back here, whoops, let me just take that out. When I come back here, see how the green is now waiting for me? I will do the same thing here at the end of round 2. So I'll just meet you up again here at the end of round 2 just to show you again. Okay, so round 2 is coming to a close. I just love how this cream just frames that texture and so lovely. Now you don't have to do the color changes like I do. You can make it all one color or use a variegated yarn like I did for the scarf, but I'm really happy with how that's coming out. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of round 2, and we not only want to carry up our yarn, but we're going to change our yarn because now we're going to go back into our double crochets. So I'm going to insert my hook into the top of that single crochet, but now see my green is right here. I just picked that up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trap this cream inside there. Okay, so I'm going to pull that. Never mind. So I'm going to insert my yarn, and now I'm going to pick up the green. So just drop the cream there. And I'm going to use that to slip stitch through. And of course, I'm going to have to cinch that a little bit. And there we go. So now I'm ready to start round 3. Okay, so that's how you would change colors, and that's how you would carry up your yarn. So I'm going to do round 3 again one more time with you guys. I'm going to chain 1 and right back into that same stitch. I'm going to loosely do a double crochet. Okay, and continue on. So round 3 is the double crochet round, just 1 into every stitch. And I'm going to come back and meet you at the end of round 3 again because I want to talk about carrying up your cream yarn. So again, just to show you the technique of carrying up the yarn. At this point, if you get the pattern, I can set you completely loose, and you're just going to keep repeating round 1 through 4, 1 through 4, and keep stacking them until you get the height of your hat that you would like. In the meantime, for those of you that want to see the next phase of carrying your yarn, I'll meet you back here in a moment. So press pause, and I'll meet you back here shortly. All right, I'm just coming up to the end here. Now, with this, now it's important to keep stretching this out as you work on it. A lot of times with projects, as we get into the groove of things, we inadvertently start gradually relaxing kind of the tension we're using, maybe inadvertently getting a little tighter. And especially with this, because we started off making it a little bit snug, it is easy for it to kind of actually get tighter. So through as you go through each row, just keep stretching it, keep trying it on so that it sits nicely, okay? If you are worrying about, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, if you generally worry about being tighter as a crocheter, use more chains. So you might want to let yours be a little bit more looser. So, but keep that in mind. This is what you want to do as you go along. So I've come up to the end of round 3, and now I want to carry up my cream. So I'm going to find the top of that first double crochet stitch, which is right there. And before I pull this one in, I'm going to trap this cream in there. So I just loop it above. And then when I pull this one through, see how it's getting locked in there? I pull it through, and now it's going to get locked in there. Okay? So hopefully you can see that. So see, now it's being fed up as we work along, as opposed to this one, which I forgot to do. Okay? So this is the inside of the hat, so no one's going to see it, but it just makes it a little bit easier to work with, and you don't have to worry so much about it pulling and snagging. Okay, so I'm not using the cream still, so then I just drop it off to the side and I continue on with my green or my sage. Whoops. The other thing you want to be careful when you're working with a couple is that you don't get all tangled. Okay, so then I continue on to round 4, chain 1, double crochet back into that same stitch. Oops. Careful not to split your yarn. And now round 4 is the ribbed row. So we've already worked into this stitch, so we go into the post of the next stitch and we do a front post. And now we work a back post into the next or around the next post. And take your time here. And this is where things can sometimes get a little tighter as you work, as you inadvertently are kind of crocheting snugly. In these posts, you purposely want to make sure that you are just keeping it nice and relaxed and pulling it up a little bit. Okay? And that should help to keep your work and your hat at a comfortable size. Otherwise, at the end of it all, you may have to give it to a smaller person, which wouldn't be a bad thing either. I'm sure they would really appreciate it. So here we go. I'm just doing a few here. Back post. Really keep it. See, especially those back posts, it's easy to get really snug. So I try and pull it up just a bit. Keep it relaxed. Okay? And that's it. That is your pattern repeat. So continue on. I'm going to set you loose now to finish the height of your hat. Repeat rounds 1 through 4. And now you can see how to carry your yarn if you're using 2 yarns. And eventually I'm going to run out and then I'm going to move on to my dark green there. And if you need any help or refresher on how to join your yarns, I'm just leaving up in the cards here a link to how to create your magic join, where you can join 2 yarns together and knot them nice and tightly. All right, guys, I'm going to see you once you've reached your desired height for your hat. Okay, guys, so I have the length that I am happy with, which is a total of just under 11 inches. We'll say 10.5 inches, or about just under 28 centimeters, okay? Now, with a project like this, with the ribbing, it does start to snuggle in a bit. So I started from the beigey creamy portion here. And in fact, what I'm gonna do is I am going to use my gray blue portion to start the brim of my hat. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the ribbing effect does kind of create a little bit more of a snuggle technique or effect, I should say. It does kind of create it to be a little bit snugger than initially thought. So anytime we work in the round for hats where we don't start with the brim, this is a common thing that can happen. And as relaxed as you can stitch, which I feel pretty confident at staying nice and relaxed, the ribbing effect tends to kind of allow the work to kind of scrunch in a bit. Now there is a lot of stretch here, okay? So you should be a-okay with that. But I found that as I went along, it relaxed. I was able to relax a bit more than up here. And in fact, as I went along on my single crochet rounds, what I would do is I would add 2 stitches on each side. So you can increase the number of stitches gradually if you like, but make sure for this pattern you do it in sets of 2, right? So I couldn't increase just 1 stitch because then that leaves me with an odd stitch count, which would affect the design. Because again, we're looking to alternate front post, back post, front post, back post. Having said all of that, we are now ready to work on our brim. So we've finished with round 4, which is a front post, back post alternating round. For the brim to create that definite ribbing effect, we are going to continue to repeat round 4 for at least 3 more times, okay? So I basically went until I ran out of all of my colors that I wanted to use up. So now I have a bunch of this really pretty gray color left. Now it is, even though it's a medium 4, it's much thinner than the yarn I was using, which I would say would be more closer to a bulky weight. So what I've done is I'm using 2 strands together. And I've never figured out why sometimes on the medium 4 weight category, there's such a wide scale on the thickness of the yarns. So I'm sure if some of you know the answer, please let me know. Okay, so I'm at the end here. Whoops. And my slip stitch has come undone. So I'm just going to continue on repeating round 4. And just to make sure that that makes sense, I'm going to start it with you again. So we'll chain 1, very relaxed. And by the way, when I said I had gradually increased the stitches a few times, I now have 50 stitches in total. Now, your head might be okay. Like, I can actually fit this around my head with the original 22 inches. The thing is, it has gotten a bit snugger over time. So that is why for me, just increased a few times, and you can't even really tell too much. And so now it's just sitting, and I continue to be very relaxed with my stitches. So that's why I have 50 stitches at the end, okay? But you might be totally okay, especially if you're making this for a child. You would probably be a-okay with just keeping the stitch count exactly the same. Okay, so we've chained our 1. Now we're going to do a double crochet right back into that same stitch. And I am working with 2 yarns together, so I want to make sure that treat them as one. And so now, because we're going to repeat exactly the same thing we did in round 4, what's really nice about this is that you can see where the front posts are already. So I am going to front post where there's already a front post. So I can see that front post is right there. So I'm going to front post double crochet around the stitch that's already been worked into a front post. So what that does is that now elongates the texture of that post. So now for the next one, because that one's pushed back, that's a back post double crochet. So I'm going to go from behind and wrap around that back post. Now be very careful, because it's easy to think you have to go down here, but remember, this is the post 2 rows down. The post below this one is right here. Okay, so just take some nice and easy patience, take your time. Okay, and now I'm going to front post around the next front post. So I'll yarn over, front post, just like that. And I'm going to do a few more with you just so you get the hang of it. So I'm going to find, so see, not this round, but this round here. And I'm going to back post around the back post. And it can be very tricky with all these loops here. And then I'm going to front post around the front post right there. So I've done a few here. Now, the thing is, I have graduated from this ice blue to the gray. So it may still feel like it's just creating too much of a different texture. But see, if I set it down, you can really see how these posts are elongating now. And that's where we'll really be able to tell the difference between the top of our hat and the brim. And we'll talk about the top in a moment, but we're going to finish the brim. So I would do this for a total of 3 rows. So this is the first row of the repeat, the second row, and I'm going to do a third row. So we're repeating round 4. Sorry, I was saying rows. We're going to repeat round 4 3 more times. So this is the first of the 3. Okay? And I'll meet you back here when you've done your 3 rounds. And I'm just at the very end of my third repeat of round 4, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join. And so you guys should be able to see now. You can see where the definite brim is. And so the really wonderful thing about this ribbing technique, and I just love doing it with front post and back post stitching, is that yes, it does snuggle things in, but it also creates quite a bit of stretch. And in a few other projects, we've done ribbing effects, working single crochets in the back loops only, going back and forth that way. And that also creates a nice, beautiful stretch. Now for this hat, because I wanted to have that kind of chunky, bulky look, I'm really happy with that. So now we've got this like long beanie toque kind of effect, which is what I love. Now, I actually like to do just a nice, neat little finishing round with single crochets just all the way around of my brims. But some people are very happy to just leave it as is. And if that is you, then you can certainly fasten off and weave in your end. And then meet me back here in a few minutes when we're going to cinch in the top of our hat. But for now, for those of you that would like to do the simple little finishing round with me, just stick around a couple more minutes. And it's quite easy. We're going to chain 1 as we've always done, but now we're just going to work single crochet stitches. So we're going to go right back into that same stitch, and we're just going to do a nice relaxed single crochet, 1 into each stitch all the way around. Okay, and I'll do a few here just so you can see what we're going for here. And the stitches should be nice and easy to see. We're not working posts anymore. We're just going right into the stitches themselves. Okay, so I've done a few here. So you can see how it just creates this nice little finishing round, and it kind of matches up with up here. All right, so go ahead and do that. And then you can fasten off and weave in your end. I'll just be at the end there just to make sure that we're on the same page. So I will see you shortly. And I'm just going to slip stitch at the very end here, and we are done. So see how it just kind of gives it that really nice finished look. For me, that's what I like. Okay, time to snip our yarn. Okay, just going to fasten off. And you can weave in your ends when you're done. Now what I want to do is I want to go on to the top of the hat here, and so you can see where all the color changes happen. I just really wanted to use up the last bits of this yarn, and so I'm just going to use that kind of as the back. But I really love how these color changes just gradually kind of move their way up. Now the only thing is I am completely out of this cream color. So I'm going to use some of this gray color to sew this in. Now, usually I might do another round of gray just to kind of anchor the two ends, but really this is going to bunch in. No one's going to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my tube inside out. Okay. And so actually you can see where I carried up the yarn, so I'll have to tie these in later. Now here you can see where I forgot to keep carrying it underneath the stitches. And that happens sometimes, but guess what? It's on the inside of your work. Nobody's going to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here, and I'm actually going to tie onto this tail. Remember this tail? We use this to kind of cinch in the back end of that chainless foundation row. So, and I am actually going to keep 2 strands together. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to measure maybe 2 times the length of the width of my hat. And usually if I'm sewing something, I would do more, but because this is going to be cinched in, I don't need that much length. So to start off with here, I am going to tie these together so that they become one. And I like using my magic join method. So I tie this one to that one, and then I take my cream and I'm going to tie this to my gray. Oops. So, and you probably saw that in the magic join method. So see how it creates a loop, and then I just take the 2 ends, I pull them nice and tight together, and they're going nowhere. And now I'm just going to cut off my little excess tails here, really close to the knot. It's not going anywhere. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to feed this through my yarn needle. And then we're going to cinch up the top of our hat. And that will be our project for the ribs and rows pattern in the round. So what I want to do, and you've probably have seen this in other projects that we've done, and most recently, probably a couple of videos back, you saw it in the Scrappy Cap tutorial. So you see how we can see the tops of the stitches there? So I'm just going to weave my needle in and then out, in and then out, in and then out. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay. And then what that does, whoops, and I'm probably going to have to watch because this little knot may need some help getting through. Okay, just nice and gentle, pull it through. See how it's cinching in like this? That's what we're going to do with the whole top. Okay, so just continue doing in and out, in and out. Okay, now if you find that this these loops on the top don't feel as strong to you, you can also just go in and out around the little posts of the single crochets. Because that's on the inside of the hat, you're okay with that. So that would work fine. I'm going to continue on just using the loops. I feel confident with this because I'm using every single loop. All of them together just create a much more fortified cinch top. Okay. So continue with that all the way around. You're going to keep weaving it in and out until you get back to the beginning. And I'll meet you there, and I'll just talk about how we're going to secure our cinch top. All right, so you can see actually most of my cream went through it just perfectly. Okay, so I'm right back to the very beginning again. So I've cinched the top in pretty tight. So see how it kind of puckers in the center? That's exactly what we want. So then what I do is I'm just going to go back and forth now. I'm going to reach right across. Now you want to be careful here that you don't sew in the wrong part of your hat shut. You want it to stay fairly close to the top of that opening. Okay, so I go across the center. And then I go back in to the same spot. Again, really close to that edge here. I also don't want that gray to show up too much, right? Okay, so that cinches it there. And now I'm going to go crossways. I'm going to pick up a couple loops here, and I'm going to go across the way there. Whoops, I just lost that off of my yarn needle. Just going to go right across the way there. And now I'm going to cinch it again. So every time you go across, it just gets cinched in a bit tighter. So I like to do it twice in the same spot so that it will really stay secure. Okay, now I'm going to do that a few times, and then I'll go across in a diagonal here. And what I'm trying to do is just really get that opening at the top to just be cinched shut nicely. Okay, so do that as many times as you like so you can see how the top is really getting sealed off. So I'm going to do this a bunch more times because I just like sewing things to the heavens. And then you're going to tie off a knot and you will be ready to go to turn your hat inside or right side out. Okay, so I'm just going to do this a bunch more times, and then when I'm ready to knot it, in fact, I'll do one right now. I'll just go under like that and create a knot, and I'll do that a few times so that it's nice and secure. All right, so I am ready to turn my hat inside out, and there is the top of it. You can see a wee bit of the gray, but you know what? It is a-okay. So there we have it. So this is our ribs and rows in the round. So in this example, so you would kind of wear it like that, like a slouchy beanie. So in this example, I used this pattern to create a hat. So nice and easy design. The difference is we had to work it in even numbers as opposed to odd numbers. We created this really pretty brim, which I am so in love with this. Alternating front and back post. And that's what it looks like on the inside. And I always love finishing it off with a round of single crochets, which I think just gives it that beautiful finishing touch. We just cinched in the top and we are good to go. Now, when you use this design in the round, you could use it to make mittens. You could use it to make a bag. So working in the round just means you're working in a circle, so to speak. Now, not a flat circle, mind you, but it was just a way to show you how you can take the same pattern and work it in a different type of design. So most likely you've already seen our tutorial on the ribs and rows pattern, which I created a scarf out of. You can do that for blankets. Also, you can make bags as well. You can make square bags, rectangular bags. So anyway, I'm going on and on. I just love how this texture came out. And by using something super simple like a double crochet and a single crochet, but just kind of alternating your placement of it just can give a project such a lovely texture. And so the ribbing effect of the alternating front post and back post double crochets just always gives it a nice chunky feel. And in fact, this is how a lot of people do their brims or cuffs for things, is using the front and back post double crochet. So there you have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope we've given you a little bit more insight on different ways to work patterns. And we have more of these type of tutorials coming up for you throughout the year. And if you have any questions, always please do feel free to leave me a comment in the comment box down below, or you can always reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you press that subscribe button so you never miss another one of our episodes. We upload every Wednesday. In the meantime, everyone, have an amazing day, happy crocheting, and take care.